if you can just sort of indicate, turn your microphone on, and just ask to speak, mention your name, and Sonia will allow you to ask questions. Try and wait until people have stopped talking until you sort of butt in. So we'll have a few minutes of Q&A after each speaker. And we hopefully you find this interesting. It's our first one. We're just all going to get used to this, so bear with us. Let's hopefully have some fun and educate ourselves in this new way of communicating as a group. Over to you, Steph.
Thank you, John. I spent half an hour this morning to prepare the welcome. Thank you for taking over. Good morning, everybody, and good morning to all SAIA board members. Thank you, John, for that welcome this morning. Welcome to all our esteemed guest speakers as well this morning. I hope it would be educational this morning. And as John said, let's keep it until the end of the seminar, or webinar, as you call it. We are talking this morning about the implications of the COVID-19 pandemic on the auction industry, and we've got esteemed guest speakers this morning that will share their thoughts and experiences on specific auction industries for the last couple of months. First of all, I would like to thank all our guest speakers, John Cowing, Cornele, Gift, and Mr. Joff van Rienen, for putting themselves available for the seminar this morning. And then, short and sweet, I would like to introduce our president of SAIA, Mr. John Cowing, who is going to lead off this morning with the discussion. He's an auction veteran for the last 30 years. He's got more than 30 years experience in the industry. He's managed auctions in 22 countries worldwide. The highlight of his career was when he sold 17,000 lots on a day auction in London. He's one of our greats in South Africa, and we're very privileged to have him here. He's currently leading up the international partner company of GoDuff Industries here in Cape Town, and he's also the chairman of our SAIA board. So, John, thank you very much for sharing some thoughts on the online auction specifically with this pandemic that we're all facing.
Okay, thank you, Steph. Yeah, thanks for that illustrious introduction. I would like to share my thoughts on what's been going on for some of our board members who are on this call. We had a very tricky time at the beginning of the lockdown, trying to establish where we as auctioneers fitted in on this, and there was a lot of interesting dialogue, auctioneers sort of vocalizing themselves, suggesting we should start work irrespective of all of the laws that were laid down in front of us. So anyway, I'm pleased to say that I would imagine most of us have got back to work, and I think a lot of people have had a very rude awakening in terms of changing their business model to accommodate this new legislation, temporary or not. So yeah, in terms of online auctions, I have been doing online auctions since 2004. In 2004, I moved back from the UK and I opened up Go Industry Dovebed here, and we brought online auctions as a brand new thought. It was obviously when we first initially introduced it, I think people couldn't necessarily see the benefits, and it's only until such time that buyers start using the technology do they suddenly realize that there are some benefits in doing online auctions. And I'll talk about some of those benefits, but I must also warn you that there are some disadvantages with online auctions, and I'll try and highlight some of those for you. But in terms of the benefits of online auction, I think the most important one is you're able to invite a far bigger audience to your auction. So when people get used to this technology, I expect all of us to see bigger audiences at our auctions, people participating from far wider afield. The research that we did when I was still based in the UK, that when you sell movable assets, that 90% of the people that attend your auctions come within 100 kilometers of the auction location. Obviously, with online auctions, that's a very different scenario. And we're getting global participation in some of our auctions, but certainly national and regional participation. I'll be interested to hear from Joff with his auction later on, with his new technology, but certainly it widens up your audiences. It also introduces far better reporting because it's digitally captured. You're able to get much better data post-auction from a tracking perspective. Some clients, see this as a great advantage in doing so. And then I think thirdly, the information that you can provide buyers pre-auction is far bigger. People are able to look at it at their leisure. Viewing becomes less necessary, and there's a lot more time available to the buyer in terms of investigating what they want to buy on auction. So those are some of the primary benefits. I mean, the disadvantages of auctions, first and foremost, is there's a lot more work associated with loading the assets onto site. So I think prior to this move, with an online, with a live auction, you were able to write a catalog, and buyers were accustomed to turning up at the viewing, picking up a catalog, and making their buying decisions there. Now you have to provide them with proper detail, multiple photographs, multiple better descriptions, to avoid any sort of issues post-auction. So I would urge everyone who's doing this is you need to take a lot more time at the beginning in preparing your auctions to avoid issues. We all have experienced buyer's remorse, as I call it, when people try and wriggle out of sales. And you need to make sure that the detail that you provided them is sufficiently clears you of any fault. So if you can do that, I would suggest prepare yourself to spend a lot more time in getting your auctions ready. The second thing is, one of the problems and the resistance is the fact that you need a technology tool, a phone or a tablet, to actually participate in auctions. And there are a lot of our new buyers that have come into buying on our auctions that don't necessarily have access to these technology tools. So you have to have an offline proxy bid plan in place where people are able to place bids either as a fax or a telephone bidding or emailing through a proxy bid. So people who can't join electronically are able to participate. I think the problem that presents is that a lot of buyers are very nervous in disclosing what their maximum bid on a per lot basis. And I think you need to work a lot harder to try and convince people that you will bid competitively on their behalf without taking them to the final to their maximum bid. So there's some integrity issues. There's some technology issues. You need to try and take these on board, and I think you need to all improve whatever your technology and your email, your internet connections, and with all the various people that are working within your organization. You need a proper, reliable connection. This technology does fall over sometimes, and you need to have a backup so your auction is not ruined should it go down. So yeah, I just wanted to open up with that. Those are my thoughts on it. Online auctions, to give you an idea, when I came here in 2004, we were doing about 70% online auction, live auctions, and 30% online auctions in the UK. we globally, outside of South Africa, we haven't done a live auction in Go Industry Dovebed for 7 years. So, we are totally an online auction business apart from some of our auctions that we're doing here. So I think it's something, if you haven't embraced it, you need to embrace it. We're seeing some very interesting new technologies coming out, which we'll hear about now. I just, if I can help anyone in any way, please give me a call. I'm very happy to help you if you're in your decision making, if I could be of use. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, John, for sharing your expertise and years of experience. I think it's quite interesting how the industry has changed with the online facilities becoming available for auctioneers, especially in South Africa as well. I would like now to give the floor to Kwanele. Kwanele is the Director and Lead Auctioneer of Ride Auctioneers. He's also the Head of Transformation at the South African Institute of Auctioneers and a turnkey asset disposal specialist. He was the youngest independent black livestock auctioneer in South Africa, a great achievement, and have successfully managed to sell millions of rands of livestock. He is going to share his foreign experience on agricultural auctions, which is the first auction industry that was opened up during this course of the pandemic. Kwanele, welcome this morning, and thank you for sharing your thoughts this morning with us.
Morning to everyone. I'm not sure if you can hear me properly. Hello?
We can. Thank you.
All right. As alluded earlier, we are currently conducting a few livestock auctions on behalf of various government institutions. As we speak today, I've actually got an auction running with my other auctioneer on the podium as we speak. I've made this moment to just avail myself here. As Steph had mentioned earlier on, the livestock auctioneering space is one of the few that was not really, I don't want to say not really affected, but that was active under the pandemic and the COVID lockdown measurements, which still baffles me today because in reality, I understand the concept that government states that livestock is food security and all other agricultural products as well. However, to date, with all the auctions that we've done under the banner of agriculture, there's two core assets that we would focus on, which would be obviously the livestock, where the small stock being sheep and goats, and then your livestock being the cattle. Now, the interesting part there is that what we've come to learn is it's a very diverse space on its own, where it involves a lot of logistics in terms of moving the animals, understanding the health of the animals, the condition of the animals, the weight, the breed, and obviously the holding capacities of the facilities that you would be disposing of these animals from. We speak of lot numbers when we discuss other assets in the auctioneering space. Basically, it applies the same with livestock as well. The difference is, as opposed to vehicles having VIN numbers, they would have tags, and also they would be branded on the actual animals as well. And I note that Gift and my friend Charles are here as well, and it's been running through my mind why out of these two assets, when I mention two assets, I mean agricultural implements, and we're talking of the actual physical animals themselves. However, to date, I've never seen, which is something that has been baffling me, I've never seen auctions conducted on silos or any storage of mealies or agricultural plants that are within the space, but that's a discussion for another day. Going back to that, what I note is most of the guys within the agricultural space are still maintaining the traditional face-to-face interaction of actually conducting the whole auction. However, I do note that technology has also now crept into the space, and I see that there's a few online solutions that are being offered within the agricultural space, which when I do my research and from the newsletters that we get and the feedback that we get from SAFLA APAC and all the other associations within the agricultural space, it's still a bit difficult for the guys to actually want to pay as much. For example, we conducted an auction on a Bonsmara previously before the pandemic and the foot and mouth disease that had hit our country earlier on this year. You would be fetching in between 25 to 30 on a good animal, like on a good breed of a Bonsmara. The last auction we did, we were only fetching between 12 and 15,000 on a good animal. But hello.
We can hear you.
All right. So that has the pandemic itself has affected the industry as a whole, and that has driven some of the livestock auctioneers to now realize the importance of what Mr. Cowing had mentioned earlier on, which is migrating to the online platform and having other alternative solutions within that space. But the sad reality is most of these farmers are not as technologically advanced as we would like them to be. And then the other reality is the infrastructure within the different farms, if it's going to be on a farm or livestock auction yard or any other facility, is majority of the time 80 to 90% would be in a remote area on a farm somewhere. You find that there's issues with your technology and all of that. So most of the guys are battling to actually find a seamless 100% solution in terms of online. But I believe with the years as we go along, it would be more refined and obviously developed to fit that specific space as a whole. I'm not too sure what more I can add onto livestock auctioneering. I think I'll just leave on to the questions and answers when that opportunity comes, and I'll just leave it at there for now.
Thank you very much, Corneli, for that input. It's interesting to hear from the industry that, from our auction perspective, that's already been open and what you guys could have achieved so far. Next is it's a very good young old friend of mine, Gift Cornelia. He was introduced to the auctioneering industry at a tender age of 19, and I think he's now 21, turned 21 last week, Gift. He began his career in the auction industry in Zimbabwe. He achieved great success when he became the youngest auctioneer to join the tobacco auctioneering industry, which then was the largest tobacco sales floor in the world. With his exceptional auctioneering skills, marketing skills, he formed part of the Lions Group a couple of years later, and then became a founding member of the Auction Exchange, a commercial property auctioneering company. Currently, Gift is assisting the establishment called Auction Nation, where he's taken over the salvage auction industry and prided himself as one of the largest salvage auction houses in the country doing salvage vehicles. Gift is also a director on our SAIA board, and he will chat about the influence of the pandemic on the industry of vehicle auctions. Good morning, Gift, and welcome.
Thank you, Steph. How are you doing, everyone?
Morning.
Firstly, I just want to say thank you to SAIA for obviously creating this much needed platform, which really allows us to share much needed information amongst ourselves as auction practitioners on the impact this pandemic has had on our businesses and more so on the auction industry as a whole, both globally and locally, and more so the long-lasting effect it will have after it. And that's me being positive that we will overcome this pandemic as well. I want to specifically focus, of course, on the impact that the pandemic has had on vehicle auctions. I can tell you first and foremost that there aren't a lot of people in gloves and masks that are running around and bidding on cars at auctions at this current moment. It's critical for auctioneers to recognize what may be an unpleasant truth, that it might take all the cash you can gather to sustain your businesses and be in a viable position for when the market does come back. As COVID-19 continues to disrupt every aspect of our daily lives, I think the used car market certainly wasn't immune to the impact of this unprecedented pandemic. Like many of us, the initial reaction by this segment, or rather the auction industry, was to adjust immediately to the threat And of course, most auction houses, wholesale buyers, and even dealerships quickly suspended their operations to ensure that the safety and well-being of their personnel came first. I think the initial impact on vehicle production and sales, as well as the backlash and recession, promises long-lasting severe implications, for all world automakers and suppliers of parts, which will definitely have in turn a ripple effect on any form of car sales and auctions on vehicles around the globe, and specifically more so in the country. The car auction industry in South Africa has all but stalled during the national lockdown, putting thousands of jobs at risk. Vehicle auctions, vehicle auctioneers are an essential part of the automotive value chain. And the longer a restrictive lockdown continues, the higher the number of vehicle auctioneers that may end up, having to close shop. It goes without saying, ladies and gentlemen, that the COVID-19 pandemic has hindered auctions in South Africa, and as a result led to the steady decline in vehicle volumes, which is what we've seen. Obviously, there's less vehicles that are having accidents, and I speak from a salvage perspective. From the highs that we saw in February and in the beginning of March, auction activity started to decline slightly as dealerships in the COVID-19 hospital began closing and auctions started shifting to online sales. Prices declined, I would probably say, by about 1 to 2% during the first week of the month of the lockdown, and then of course gradually, continued to do so. The National Automobile Dealers Association says that there's about, call it 1,600 franchises, dealers in South Africa, employing about 60,000 people directly, and nearly 1 million in the automotive chain, with the multiplier effect, which spills into vehicle auctions, all at high risk of retrenchments and imminent closure. That is the real biggest threat that we've had in the vehicle auction. However, there are indications as well that the pre-owned and salvage vehicle auctions provide a glimmer of hope. Now, while new vehicle sales in SA might have plunged, say, plus minus 29% as a result of the COVID, used vehicle sales and salvage vehicles increased. The pre-owned vehicle sales on the Auto Trader website, which we all know is the largest marketplace online, rose from about 30,000 units in March to about 33,000 units to date, which is a good indicator that there is a dire need for second-hand and salvage vehicle auctions, which is evident in the current returns as well that we are seeing. And that obviously comes down to the laws of supply and demand. So, the less of the cars that we have to feed the guys out there who are hungry and can't really afford brand new cars, means that obviously the prices are going to shoot out the roof. So while the coronavirus outbreak is unlike anything we've experienced in our lifetime, we can take stock from the past, which is where we need to become positive. The digital solutions that Mr. Cohen was mainly speaking about. The car purchase, while avoiding human contact, is one area that will give auctioneers a much needed boost. The lockdown level 3 regulations that were gazetted, allow for car sales to be phased in, but this didn't really help car auctioneers much, as the strict social distancing regulations still apply, because mainly for us it's more the physical auctions than it's always been on the online platform. And I'm going to touch a little bit on that, because now the next thing would have been what was our response. And I'm going to speak personally from an auction nation perspective. The 1st of June was the first time that we welcomed any customers onto our sites after 11 weeks of lockdown. And as it stands, it's still too soon to welcome buyers to a physical auction with social distancing measures still in force. So what we as Auction Nation introduced, which we were already doing, was to look at new measures to help the buyer select and view salvage stock prior to online auctions taking place, which is where we've now centered our business on. And it's, we are so blessed to say that, because we were able to adjust our business from physical auctions to a completely online platform, which is where we are conducting all our auctions at the moment. A limited number of buyers will be allowed on site, obviously to an auction to view vehicles, with each person having to sign an online form and confirm the specific sale that they're interested in viewing. And all the buyers report to auction reception and will only be allowed to enter our premises once they have been through the COVID check-in process. Now, that being done, buyers will not be able to turn up and view stock without an appointment. And for the time being, the auction program will continue in its online format, with no physical buyers being present. The current official government guidance states that physical vehicle auctions will remain closed until possibly level 2, level 1 of the lockdown. And it's too early to host physical auctions in any event at this stage, as the numbers still continue to rise in the COVID space. However, that being said, in the auction vehicle business, more so salvage, we recognize that our loyal buyers may want to see vehicles prior to bidding online auctions. We have improved on our imagery, inspections, and of course the coding of our vehicles clearly to show the conditions of the vehicles that we are putting online, and to obviously get a better response and a better value from the buyers that are buying. But there are real assurances that we cannot dismiss that buyers take from physical viewing, especially in our space. So we'll be monitoring the process as well and the successes of this, to see in the future. And in the meantime, we will continue to do all our auctions in that online platform, which is the way forward for us. And I think possibly maybe the way forward, going forward for vehicle auctions as well. But in conclusion, it's not all gloom. The ending of one era ushers in the beginning of another. And of course, we all want to stay positive. We need to keep perspective and continue to show up realistically at our auctions and at our offices of space over this disruptive time. And I think we must continue to challenge our perceptions of change as well, because a lot of us have been stuck to conventional auctioneering. And as uncertain as the future may look, we must be innovative and come up with new tools to keep perspective, as well as provide some practical new ideas of buying on auction for our buyers, and more so to possibly keep our industry alive as well. Thank you, Steph.
Thank you very much, Gift. And I think in stating that, all of us in this industry need to stay positive, think out of the box, but very important to stay positive and assist each other in getting the results that we are used to getting in the auction industry. So thank you very much for those wise words. Lastly, I would like to introduce Geoff van Renen, if he needs introduction. He is a director and founding partner of the High Street Auction Company, and arguably South Africa's most, I wouldn't say experienced, but mostly competent and entertaining auctioneer, and largely an expert in the property auction industry. Geoff currently holds the South African record for the highest bid on a single property that they sold for the former Kyalami Grand Prix racetrack, that they sold for 205 million rand. What a great achievement that was. Geoff currently is still in demand internationally by conducting auctions by invitations, Hong Kong, Dubai, England, and the US. And currently is the company's leading auctioneer for the High Street Auction Company, where he's highly regarded and sought after by leading property investors, financial institutions, where he has quite an impressive track record for selling properties on the auction platform. I think Geoff also would like to mention that the difference they've made currently with this pandemic running, of the new technology that they got involved in, and would like for you to share a couple of words on that. So Geoff will share their experience on the property auctions in this industry. Thank you. Morning, Geoff.
Morning. For a second there, for a moment, I was wondering who the hell are you talking about? Morning, everybody. I'm going to go through the bad stuff and then round it off with some icing on top of the cake, because there is light at the end of the tunnel. Property auctions, like every segment of our industry, have pretty much flatlined. While we were one of the lucky few that had the technology to conduct auctions virtually during the lockdown period, it hasn't been a particularly pretty 3 months. So I'm going to try and cram into 10 minutes what I think a lot of us want to know or don't know. If one thing's for sure, if anybody tells you they know exactly what's happening in their particular industry, they're liars, because nobody does right now. Firstly, as far as I'm concerned, traditional auctions as we know them are never going to be the same again. As you may or may not know, we've been conducting our streamed multiple auctions from Summer Place in Johannesburg for about 10 years. And I seriously doubted we're ever going to go back there. From an online perspective, what you may or may not have seen a couple of weeks ago is pretty much the format for our auctions going forward. Auction prices, property prices, you can chop 30% off any of the value of any real estate asset class you can think of. Real estate, and that's just the start. Retail, commercial, industrial, high-end residential. 9 months ago, we were selling stands in Clifton for 20 million. Now he's selling stands in Clifton for 8 and 10 million. That is the reality. And I'll get to the sellers and the institutional work a little bit later, but some properties, and we've been checking our stats. John was talking about data. We cannot overemphasize the importance of the auction analytics that you all have, that you may or may not be using, but data is actually crucial, absolutely crucial. We follow our stats every day, every auction, and it's been dropping on a regular basis. We're still not at the bottom of the hole yet that we currently find ourselves in. That's still going to come in about 2 or 3 months' time, as far as we're concerned. But nobody knows where the market's going, which is a good thing because it puts us all in the same boat. I spoke to a few auctioneers in America 2 days ago, and they said it's exactly the same there as what we are seeing here. Our problems are, as quite a few of our auctioneers are members of SAIA, only get paid on transfer. And if you're relying on the deeds office to be open, that's not going to happen either. Every time there's going to be a COVID positive case tested, those deeds offices are going to close around the country, and it may take a day or 2 or probably a week to reopen again. So if you're relying on property transfers, if you're an attorney or conveyancer or a broker, it's not going to be pleasant. What's working for us right now? Technology. Technology. If you're not online, it's not too late. You have to be online. With our founding forefathers that have been in the business 30 years and more, that brought a lot of the technology here. What we've tried to do for real estate in the last 5-6 years, and bear in mind, it's been 6 or 7 years since we've placed an advert in any newspaper. If we can't do it online, we don't do it. We don't use a single newspaper. They don't particularly like us very much because we don't use them. All our marketing spend is digital, online, social media, pay-per-click, Google Analytics. That's exactly what we use. So the digital mediums for us are enormous. We've made huge investments prior to that. And what we've been trying to do for real estate auctions for ourselves at High Street for the last 5 years, since we've thought we were online, but actually weren't, it's cost us a huge amount of money, millions of rands, to try and get our buyers online. And it's been incredibly slow and incredibly frustrating and difficult because it hasn't happened. What COVID-19 has done for all of us, which I don't think you've realized, is it's pushed all of our buyers online for free in 90 days. And it hasn't cost us a cent. For the first time ever, we had more, in fact, it was on our last auction we did 2 weeks ago on a virtual auction. We had more registrations coming in online via the telephone, via Zoom, via the app than we've ever had at a live auction at Summer Place in the history of the company, which is a very, very good stat to know because it should and will affect us all. Social media, we've just invested in a lot. The virtual studios, the virtual tours. It's not as expensive as everybody thinks in any asset class that you're dealing with. Yes, the dynamics of our country are very different, especially our population and our rural population that a lot of us have to deal with. There are lots of ways to get around that. Most people in rural areas own 2 mobile devices, one for the boss and one for themselves. We find the best way for us to get our reach into the rural areas in South Africa, and it's happening a lot for us, is Facebook, social media. Everybody wants to be online. Everybody wants to know what the next guy in the next village or the next city or the next town is doing. So for us, it works really, really well. If you don't have an app already, get one. If you can't afford one, rent one. It is absolutely critical for any asset class, and it's working very well for us in real estate. We remember one thing. It's one thing to have the technology, which some of us do and some of us don't. It's a completely different story as to knowing how to use the technology. And I'm sure a lot of us that have the much bigger portals and international reach like John and Go Industry do. Having it is one thing, knowing how to use it is a completely different scenario, and getting your clients to use it are the two critical elements. For us, COVID-19 has been a blessing. All of our buyers have moved online, and we are not going back to live auctions. I doubt it very, very much. If summer place for us will ever happen again, having 200 or 300 people arrive at an auction for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 commercial assets, for us, it's a thing of the past. It's not going to happen again. SAIA, and specifically our auctioneers and our members, and this happened to us yesterday, need to speak out about what your particular market is doing. For us, it's real estate. We're having lots of discussions with the banks, with the clients, with the listed property funds, with the corporates where most of our work is. Where you think the market is, it's not. Where you think the market is now and where it's going to be in another month's time, it's more than likely going to tank another 5 or 10%. We call it, BC, before COVID. The values that the real estate is having now, and I mean, some of the assets we've seen as much as a 40 and a 50% drop in value. It's not going to say that you're not going to sell it. It just means you need to screen your sellers better. It's just another cycle. It may be the biggest cycle we're ever going to see in our entire lives, but people need to sell and people need to buy. It has to happen. And that's where auctioneers come in at best. When you speak to your clients for your specific asset class, you need to be the authoritative voice for your clients. They need to know that they can come to you for advice. They need to come to you because you know what the market is doing. We are the experts in our field. That's why we're members of SAIA. And also, you need to tell them the truth. We tell everybody, if you're thinking of selling your asset now, don't. You're not going to lose money on it. You may have to hang on to it for 2 years, but you're not going to lose money. If you do have to sell your asset, and there are a lot of people that do have to sell assets now, which is why auctioneers are perfectly positioned to assist in this process, you have to tell them the truth. Don't sugarcoat it. Be brutal when it comes to telling them exactly where the market is. A lot of them appreciate it. A lot of them come back to you, but it affects all of us if you lie to your clients. We have a saying as auctioneers, you can lie to your client for 30 days, but the truth is going to come out on the block. And that's when it affects our profession and your credibility. The new market normal, it's bad. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. However, auctioneers, and specifically your auction platforms, are perfectly positioned to dispose of assets on a very accelerated manner, which is what a lot of the people in South Africa need right now. For an asset class, what's hot and what's not, rural properties for us are working really, really well. Our last virtual auction, we had more people bidding from overseas than we've ever had before, all wanting to buy game lodges, all wanting to buy farms, all wanting to buy properties in rural area. We had bidders coming in from South America, North America, England, France, and I think 6 different provinces around South Africa. We've never had that before. Not all at the same time. We have maybe 1, hopefully 2, but from 3 different continents, or 4 different continents, North, South America, Europe, and Africa. We've been watching our stats, and they're doing very, very well for us. All sales of under 3 million rand in South Africa. If you check on Lightstone, that accounts for 60% of all transfers happening in South Africa. So if your market is between 250,000 and 3 million, you're in a good space. For us, it's a little more challenging because we deal in slightly larger numbers. You're dealing with 0.01% of the market if you're lucky. So you have to be extremely targeted, as we call being an auction sniper in this kind of markets. Putting an advert in the Sunday Times, bless them, where they claim a readership of 4.5 million and their print run is only 435,000. You can't tell me that 10 people are reading the same newspaper. You cannot throw that blanket approach anymore. You have to specialize in the industry or the asset class you're in. The worst, it's still coming. So brace for it. Between the anger and the depression and the and the alcohol levels that we're all probably going through, including myself, it's going to get worse before it gets better. We think that the big part of the storm is probably going to hit September, October in 3 months' time, when most of the financial institutions and people in South Africa realize I still can't pay my bond, or I still can't pay my lease or my installment sale or my assets. Right now, it's the lowest interest rates in our living lifetimes, except for John, who's over 50. But these are the lowest interest rates in 50 years. So it is a proper buyer's market. Remember that when you speak to your market. Distressed sales, if you're in that line of business, distressed properties are going to skyrocket. The banks are warning us already. If you're not speaking to them, we have been. They're the only ones in the legal and recoveries divisions of institutions and corporates that have job security. They're actually hiring staff because there's so much coming down the chute. If you're in hospitality, you might as well change professions. It's not looking good. I see the Americans with their hotel real estate industry. They're already sectionalizing hotels in New York and turning them into condos and apartment blocks. So look out for that happening here. One of the biggest property funds in the country, or probably one of the top 10, if I can call them that we lucky enough to do business with, told us a while ago that they have an excess of just over 4,500 tenants. And as of a month ago, just over 3,000 of those had already asked for relief. I can't pay, I won't pay, or I'm moving out. So just let those numbers and stats sink in. And this was a month ago, and more still coming. Process your buyers on real estate and condition your sellers properly. We've never been more bigger advocates of that. You cannot just put a property up for auction, throw your hammer in the air and expect it to sell. It's not going to happen. You also can't work on a pay-as-you-go auction program. If you do not act as a sniper in your specific asset class, if you are not getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and looking for buyers and sellers, you're going to disappear by the end of the year. It's just really not going to happen for you. There are, as far as I've seen, and there was something that came out yesterday, but it didn't really say much. There's really no stats or opinions that have been released in the last 3 months on real estate auctions or real estate sales in the country that have anything good to say or anything to say at all. No one knows where we're going other than down. However, if you are positioned correctly as an auctioneer, if you haven't made the investment in technology, do it now. It's not as expensive as you think it is. Yes, you can get the Rolls-Royce technology that costs a lot of money, but there's also technology that they offer for free. I see a lot of auctioneers are doing online auctions on Zoom. I watched one yesterday for an estate agency which wasn't particularly pleasant. No names mentioned. But if you're going to do a Zoom auction, go to YouTube and work out and watch a tutorial how Zoom works. Having the tech, as I said before, is one thing. Knowing how to use it is absolutely critical. It's not going to be the same anymore. Property auctions right now always were difficult. They're going to be extremely difficult now, and they're going to get even harder because the banks are not lending and people are hanging on to that cash and are more worried about putting food on their families or their staff or their employers' tables than actually buying any real estate. What the sellers expect, what the market's giving, it's like North Pole and South Pole. You have to explain that to your buyers, your sellers. However, all your buyers have moved online for free thanks to COVID-19. Every auction we have since lockdown, we break high street records for our own specific stats point of view. We've never had more people register online than we did for an auction we did 2 weeks ago. Way more than we've ever had at our live auctions. Auctioneers are needed now more than ever, not only because auctions are resilient, because of their violent and brutal efficiency, but how we can raise cash and literally pull cash out of fresh air for our clients is going to be absolutely crucial of the service we offer them in the next 6 to 18 months. So last thing, if you're not online, you're dead.
get online as quickly as possible. That's me in, I think, 12 minutes.
Thank you, Joff, for some harsh but real and reality words and some insight in what you guys have been doing at the High Street Property Division. Thank you very much for those insights. Ladies and gentlemen, what I will be doing now for the next 15 to 20 minutes, I will open the floor for questions for our speakers. Please just indicate by show of hand if you would like to ask a question, and just direct the question to which of the speakers you would like to ask the questions. So I'll open the floor now. If there is any questions for a specific speaker, just take yourself off mute, just raise your hand and just voice a question, and try and keep it as short as possible. So the floor is open for any questions for our guest speakers. Any questions? No questions. Seems like
yes, I've raised my hand. Sorry, I've raised my hand. It's Kumo Sebeng. It's a question.
Right, your video is not on, so sorry, I couldn't see your hand. Yes, Kumar, please go ahead.
Okay. It's a question specifically directed at Gift. It's with regard to them having closed for 11 weeks during the COVID-19 period when they were not operational. Coming back, they basically had quite a number of stock from a supplier's perspective. So I just needed to find out from him with regard to the older stock, how have they managed to achieve better recovery ratios on old stock? That's the first question. And then the second question is, how are they dealing with the pressure of licensing and getting vehicles out to clients, and at the same time trying to maintain a customer satisfaction level that's acceptable? Thank you.
Thank you, Gift. You're still on mute, Gift. Gift, you're still on mute?
Yep, sorry. I was just actually trying to get to that job. Thanks for the question, Kumo. Firstly, Kumo, I just want to bring the attention to the fact that when lockdown came into effect, as a business, we couldn't afford to close our doors completely and make sure that we had no revenue coming in, because that would have been a disaster. I mean, for auctioneers, as Joff said, some guys are getting paid on transfer. For us, it's a turnover per month, and we need that income in order to be able to keep our businesses running. So what we did is we immediately adjusted the way we did business, and we moved all our vehicles onto an online platform. And having done that, we were selling online, but we were not allowing viewings, firstly. And secondly, we were not releasing the vehicles. So we carried on doing online because, the guidance from government was that we could carry on doing, if you could move your business onto an online platform, you were allowed to continue to operate. And that's exactly what we did. So we completely eliminated any physical contact and any logistics that involved, bringing people together. And all we did is started selling vehicles. There was a positive aspect to it, and there was also a negative aspect to it. The positive was that we were still able to move volume. Granted, the negative was that the prices that we were now receiving, our returns, were very low during lockdown, for the mere purpose that our clients couldn't view the vehicles wherever they were. And because we are selling salvage, guys really, insist on wanting to view vehicles. So all we did is try to up our game in terms of the photos that we're taking and what we were putting online. But we still moved vehicles during lockdown via the online platform. And we only created an environment where guys could buy their vehicles. They didn't necessarily have to pay for them immediately. They could only pay for them once the vehicles had arrived in our hub where we were dispatching from. And what we did is we then turned around, whereas the government was saying you couldn't come, the clients couldn't come and collect the vehicles from us. So we then turned it around and said we would deliver. So we then got a vehicle company that is obviously cleared by government as an essential services provider. And what we did is we created quotes for every single client. So if you bought a vehicle online, and immediately we would then give you a quote what it would cost for us to get that vehicle to you. And so we delivered vehicles rather than the customers coming to fetch the vehicles. So in turn, what it did for us, to answer your second question, was that our volumes didn't become that big, post-lockdown because we had been moving vehicles. So all we did is once the doors were open, we were able to start releasing vehicles, and we started allowing customers to be able to come and collect their vehicles slowly but surely. So we did have an issue of space because we were holding all the vehicles, but once the doors were open for us, we were able to start releasing vehicles out to the clients. The opposite effect is that when we came out of lockdown, the volumes in the salvage space specifically have been very low, for the mere fact that obviously no one has been driving, so the accident numbers have gone down. We're almost looking at about 40% down on volumes that we would have been receiving in the same period in February as what we're receiving now. So obviously, for the purposes of our budgets, it's really been a negative for us to try and cover over, in terms of the volumes. But we are slowly, gradually picking up again, and I hope that answers your question.
Happy. Thank you very much, Gift. Okay.
Thank you, Kumar. I think if I can just make a suggestion, if your video camera is not switched on, maybe just take yourself off mute so that I can see who would like to ask the next question. Any more questions for our guest speakers? I've got a question from Joff, who raised his hand.
Gift, other than, this is on vehicle auctions, other than the supply issue that you have, do you see second-hand car values being very, very strong in the next 6 to 12 months because nobody can afford or wants to buy a new car? And do you think it's going to solidify and strengthen your market in that time?
Joff, I will tell you that our returns are at their highest in the last 2 years that I've seen.
That's great.
Within this particular period, which is very great. Vice versa, the volumes are low. So it's kind of like a catch, we're in a catch-22 situation. We're experiencing the highest returns by virtue of the laws of supply and demand. So when supply is low, obviously the numbers are going to go up. The guys are running away definitely from new vehicles. They can't afford them in any event. And your pre-owned vehicles as well, your dealerships are definitely struggling. So the guys are turning to salvage. And by virtue of doing so, everybody's hungry. And you must understand that our market is completely different from the dealerships. We're dealing with an informal sector where guys do not have a formal employment. So buying and selling salvage is their only way of bringing income into their homes. So you find that there is a big scramble at the moment for salvage vehicles, and obviously for parts. With everything being locked down, you must understand import and export is also locked down. So parts are extremely expensive or they're unavailable. So where else are you going to get them? Through salvage, where we are either dishing out cars as code 4s and the guys are stripping them for parts. So you find that is shot out the roof, also increasing our returns on the code 4s. Our code 2s also doing great as well, because that's the next level that you're going to get to when you're coming out from a pre-owned vehicle that you would buy from say an MFC or a Birchmers. So it's been great in terms of the returns, but in terms of the volumes, definitely to answer you.
So you're telling me I should buy a new car, not a second-hand car? It's cheaper.
Well, at this stage, you can't afford a brand new car because who's going to finance that car?
I think I'm switching to cars tomorrow.
Thank you, Gift. Thank you, Joff. I think Kim has also joined us. Kim, good morning. I think you wanted to ask a question, if I'm correct? No. Any other questions for our panelists? Gift, you'd like to ask a question? Yes.
Yeah. I actually wanted to direct my question to Joff, and this comes to the online platform. Now, we've experienced some challenges when it comes to to the online platform, as great as it is. And you said something that kind of like shook me a little bit when you said you guys are probably not going to go back to a physical live auctions. And what I want to ask you is, do you not think that maybe the online should be complemented with a physical auction, environment? And the reason why I'm saying this is because I understand the psychological dynamics of auctioneering as an auctioneer that is on a podium. And I'm talking about simple things like you seeing your buyer and understanding whether your buyer's got enough money or not. You understanding the simple things like how is your buyer sitting on the floor? Are they agitated? Are they anxious? Is he here with his wife or is he here by himself? And those small little things empower the auctioneer. And if you're an auctioneer and and you're on the podium and the guy continually brings up his hands quickly, you know he's still got cash, he can still give you more. And obviously, you know, when vice versa happens, you know you need to lower down your denominations, go to quarters or whatever to try and squeeze whatever you can. Do you not feel that those dynamics are being completely taken away by the online platform, firstly? Secondly, the fear of the buyer that the online platform is a very manipulative space for them. They feel that auctioneers can manipulate the auction process far much more on an online platform than they can on a physical platform. If I attend a physical auction, I can see who's bidding against me. I know what exactly is happening. On an online platform, I gotta presume the transparency levels on online platform, I feel, are not, almost probably at about 60-40, because half the time buyers keep asking us to say, who else is bidding? How do I know if you guys are not the ones pressing the button on the other side? Is there really a genuine buyer? Yes, we're gonna offer the bidders, the bidders record at the end of the day, but guys are skeptical, they are anxious. And do you not feel also as well to say, taking away the, physical auction, and this may vary from asset to asset, taking away the physical actual auction, like in my space, when we talk about salvage vehicles, the guys really want to see the vehicles because you can give them as much information as you can, via the photos. But there's certain things that even you can't go under a vehicle, you can't go into the engine to actually show a guy to say, listen, the computer box is missing. I can give him as many pictures as I possibly can and try and get as much information to him, but the guys still want that touch and feel. Do you not feel that this will take away from the auctioning industry and maybe eventually affect our returns?
What was the question? No, I'm joking. I'm joking. It's easy. 2 words. Be honest. You're only as good as your last auction. Auctioneers will always be needed. Thank goodness. We will always have longevity and the world will always need us. However, you got to use what works for you in your asset class. We haven't taken away live auctions. We've just put them in the cloud. There's a lot you can do on a live auction, as you rightly said. There's also a lot you can do online that you can't do live. I believe live auctions will always be here, but they've taken a serious dent. A lot of our clients, we're asking, if the pubs and the gyms and live events like rock concerts and auctions, public events, were all to be allowed in level 1 tomorrow, would you go? And 100% of our clients say no, they don't want to. I'm certainly not scared of catching COVID-19, thankfully, because I'm in good health and I'm just under 50. But a lot of the other clients, in fact, all of us, saying, why? Why do I have to go to a live auction anymore if I can just do it online? If you're honest and you have a credible brand, people can listen to you. We are experts in our field and what we do. No, we're not going back to summer place again, but we've just taken that whole experience and put it in a cloud, in a studio, on a podium. We're trying very, very hard to make it very, very interactive. And there's going to be more features we're going to be unlocking in a month's time. There'll always be a place for it. And however, for people like John, myself, Gift, you, Norman, and all the other online auctioneers out there, what you may lose as an auctioneer, because you're right, it's a psychology and it's a science. If you haven't had a lesson in human psychology and body language as an auctioneer,
being an auctioneer.
Yeah, you're not very good at what you do. There's always a place and will always be a place for live auctions. And there's a lot more you can do, but there's also a hell of a lot you can do online that you can't do at a live auction. For once, what we've lost at Summer Place at high street auctions is what we've now gained in our virtual auction studio online by having 4 different continents bidding at the same time. We could never have that at Summer Place. It wasn't possible. We've been trying for 5 years since we've been streaming ourselves. Could never get the buyers in. They were watching. We could see that, but they were never buying. They were never registering. They would end up sending us their fika and paying 100,000 Rand to register. So you've got to move with the times. Do I want and miss live auctions? Yes, of course I do. We're all emotional human beings and being an auctioneer, it almost feels spiritual for us when we're on the block. It takes us ages to calm down when we step off, and standing in front of 10, 100 or 1,000 people, it's a huge rush for us. And you can do a lot more as an auctioneer standing in front of a live crowd than you can sitting in front of a camera or clicking a mouse button. So for us, it's a huge positive. We've just taken that experience and just made it digital.
Okay.
Thank you. I see the hands are going up. I just got quite a few questions coming through now. Sienna has got a question for Cornele. Sienna, good morning.
Good morning, guys. Morning, Cornele. Is he available? Morning, Cornele.
He should be
Can
connected.
you hear me? Hello, hello.
Hi, Cornele. Sorry, man. I just want to check quickly. When you are doing stock auctions in every area, do you actually have your own kraal in every area, or do you rent from a farmer, or how do you do it?
Okay, there's two ways. All right. Remember, the difference is you get your breeded, which would be your, I'd say, private elite animals, which it's a group of individuals. They would then have dates set out on their own farms with a facility, and they would conduct auctions from there. Then there's government, which is I'm in the government space. Now with government, what they do is with each rural area, they have what they call livestock associations. Now this is basically a group of farmers from the area. They would have a chair, they would have a vice, and so forth and so forth. And they are the guys who basically would say regulate or observe the activities of the agriculture within that area. All right, which would involve your chiefs, wara, long story. So they have facilities. Then you are commissioned to give them a percentage of your sale for using their facility.
Okay, so you basically rent it from them then?
Yeah, so it's basically a rental, yeah.
Okay, if you have any in my area, please let me know. I would like to join.
You've got my number.
Thank you, Cornel.
Okay. Can I pose a question quickly, please?
Cornel, I'm going to come back to you now. Thank you. I've just got Rod on first.
All right.
Sorry about that. Rod, you put your hand up at one stage. You still like to ask a question?
Yes. Well, not a question. I just wanted to say hello to everyone first. Some good old faces I haven't seen for a long time. Hello. How are you, John? How are you, Gift? Dion, everyone. I just wanted to congratulate, I think, Joff on their platform. I think you set the benchmark very high with your webcast auction. I think it's very good. And we've got a lot to work towards. And I think your auction was well received for the market, for our industry. It's actually, it's doing good for everyone. If we can run proper and good auctions, I think the whole industry benefits by that. And just to respond to Gift, I think how Jock's reply was, in this market, I think the online platform is going to work exceptionally well, because where the demand is going to come is from the pricing. The pricing is going to be low, and there's going to be a lot of people looking for deals, and they're not really going to care who's pushing them if they can get a good property at good value. It becomes a bit more complex and a bit more tricky when the prices start getting pushed up, as we've historically seen that we've been trying to achieve a price that the seller wants and not more or less what the buyers are prepared to pay. So I think we've got a lot of work to do to bring reality down to the market, and that's our valuations that we're giving to the sellers, and to make sure that when we're all out there, a bad auction for anyone, and I'm saying this in all seriousness, for any online platform, if there's a bad auction, it doesn't reflect well for any of us either, because they're not going to trust the process that they could sell. The buyers are not going to trust the process that they can get any buy anything, because it's going to be all overpriced. So I think what we've all got to work together is trying to achieve a common goal, is being honest about the pricing, and people won't care where they're bidding. I mean, I've even registered to bid on properties that were done by Into Assets. So it's an exciting time for us, and I agree with what Joff said. They've just changed the platform to a cloud, and with the prices coming down and the opportunities that's going to face all these buyers, make no mistake, I think our industry has got a lot good going for it. We are at the coalface of the actual reality of prices, and I think that should be the message that we're sending out to everyone. And good luck to everyone. I hope everyone has successful and good auctions. It can only be good for each other. That's it.
Thank you very much for that positive input, Norman. Thank you very much. Cornelia, I've got you, and then John, I've got you next after Cornelia. Cornelia, you had a question for? Cornelia, you're still available to ask your question? All right, it seems that Cornelia has stepped out for a minute. John.
Hello.
Yes, Cornelia, we can hear you.
All right, sorry, I think I was muted there. Yeah, I was saying I'd like to throw this one at John Cowing and Joff. With all that being said, and the activities that are happening with the space, besides the numbers, are there any changes legally in terms of the laws that are applicable within our space now? Now that, especially Joff, I'd like to understand your terms and conditions. Do you have to now adjust them to kind of fit the online environment if you're solely running on an online platform?
We directed that question to Joff and John.
Hello.
I'll let my elders go first.
John, if you'd like to respond on that.
I say John and Joff on the basis of I'd like to categorize them in two different asset classes. I know Joff specializes with property, so there'd be certain, like he had mentioned with the deeds office and all of that. So it means our offer to purchase documents. Obviously now all of those need to change. I'm sure there's changes with even the process of transactions that happen over that on that online platform.
Okay, Cornel, I'll give John the first chance to respond.
Yeah. All right, thanks.
I would like, Joff, if you don't mind going first, because I've just I've made a couple of notes here, and I want to talk about a number of things that have come through all these discussions. So if you answer, then I'll just combine it into my answer.
So Cornelia, how's it? Yes, we have. It wasn't a massive change. It was a couple of lines in our conditions of sale. Obviously, the liability, whether you can virtually view a property or a car or an asset or a cow, or whether you can see it live, was a concern for us in the beginning. We spoke to counsel, we spoke to senior counsel, we spoke to our company attorneys, we spoke to people in Australia, America, London, and they all said the same thing. You know, just enlighten your client, tell your client. We put a very small liability disclaimer in our conditions of sale, which I'll happily share with any SAIA member. It wasn't a big issue for us. Also bear in mind, not a single property that we have sold in the last 3 months on our virtual auctions was viewed physically by a buyer. Every single one was viewed via a virtual tour, whether it was a guy sitting in America who bought a game lodge from us, or whether it's a guy sitting in Joburg or a guy sitting in Port St. John's, your hometown. The guys are happy to view the virtual tours. They're happy to view PowerPoint on YouTube or whatever property you email to them, and they don't have an issue. You know, as long as you
and digitally signed documents.
We use Adobe digital signage. You know, it's not expensive. There's others that are free.
What I'm getting to, Joff, is it acceptable if I've got my buyer signing on a digital? Those are the questions that pop in mind in terms of
you can't legally transfer a property with a digital signature. You're still going to have to go to the conveyancer, and she needs to physically witness you sign the document. But it's certainly valid for a real estate auction, because we're governed by the Alienation of Lands Act, and technically you don't even need to sign a contract for us, but obviously you're going to need to for transfer to take place. So digitally for us, we checked on it, and our attorneys and our seniors said absolutely fine. So that's what we use: digital signatures, digital viewings, digital auctions.
Okay, interesting.
John?
Thank you. John, would you like to make your comments on Cornelius' question?
Yes, well, yeah, I just wanted to touch on a few things because Cornelia raises a few points, and some of the other guys that have been talking have raised points, which I just really want to talk in general. So the first thing is the different types of technology. You know, for the real uneducated, which is some of our buyers, we need to really differentiate some of these names. So I don't know what Joff is actually calling his technology, because it's, you know, an online auction is an auction conducted, you know, in the history of the naming of auction. So you know, if I go through the naming of auction, you had live auctions. The next bit of technology that came through was a webcast or simulcast type auction, where you could participate live and you could also bid through your computer. As a you know, simultaneously against the floor, and that was called webcast. And then you've had simulcast auctions where they were using TV to project auctions. And I don't know, Joff, what do you call your type of auction? Because I think it's clear from a confusion point of view with the buyer community, online auctions close at a certain time and you have to bid before the close of the online auction. A live auction starts at a certain time and ends thereafter. So I think it's very important to differentiate, and that's something that I think we need to work on as an industry. The second thing I would like to touch upon is that a lot of the online platforms, unless you've built your own platform, are built by third-party vendors, and primarily American, maybe European. And there is a thing called international law, and a lot of the engagement that you do over the internet is, I'm so sorry, I just have to, sorry, Joff, you have to take this back.
I think what John's referring to is international law. A lot of us and a lot of you use third-party apps that come from the States or Australia or England. You need to be aware of the legal issues and the liabilities that concern you. As for what we call our auctions, I don't know. It's new. You know, I don't know what we call them either. When I figure out a name, I'll get back to you. But you know, virtual auctions for now, because we combine a little bit of everything. But John's right. You know, simulcast auctions are completely different to webcast auctions, which are completely different to online. If it's online, is it online timed, or is it, you know, online for a week, or is it online streamed? You know, what is a streamed auction compared to an online auction? What now is a virtual auction? We might have to call ours cloud auctions. I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay. Sorry about that interruption, but yeah, it's, so if you're using an online platform, which is what I call my auctions online, in the sense that the entire event is conducted online and people bid online. So there's no verbal communication. We don't take phone bidders or whatever. You have to do everything through a device. And if you're using a platform, there's international law and internet law. So, you know, in order to conduct business over the internet, you're governed by an international recognized internet law. You should really be aware of what that says. Second thing is that you need to consider the feakering process. Feakering is a very important part of legislation in this country, and you need to ensure that you're still able to feaker with these buyers. You need to have processes and ways of collecting this information and keeping it on record. So it's another thing to consider. A lot of the software that you buy in doesn't necessarily allow for the FICA process. Then I'll talk about bidding, and you know, Gift mentioned something of interest, and you know, good auctioneers don't want the live auction event to leave, because there's no question whatsoever that good auctioneers derive better value on lots. The better the auctioneer, the better the result. You know, some people can still perform the act of auctioning, but they're dreadful to listen to. And I think we've all witnessed that in some charity auction at the golf course. But if you're a good auctioneer, of course you want your people in front of you, because you are able to control them to such a degree. I think one word of caution I want to give everyone is, if you're not a good auctioneer, you're going to get caught out, be it live or online. Okay, so we've all heard of the dreaded auctioneer getting caught, pulling bids off the wall, so to speak. Well, if you're doing it on an online space, and the fact that the buyers are entitled to your records, if you have been pulling bids on an online place, it's going to be there with all to bear. So I think Norman mentioned, you know, we just got to bring some integrity to the market. If you think you can get away with it by bidding people up post-reserve, if you get caught, I'm afraid it's going to be very clear that you've deleted records or whatever, and you could ruin your business overnight. And I'm sure that the company that you're buying your software from won't want to do business with you in the future. So I think it is a time. I would like to say, I'd love to see it, but where the auctioneer is viewed as a honest Joe, and he has a job to do to bring buyer and seller together and be honest and upfront with both buyers and sellers. I think it's a wonderful thought and idea. Long may that thought last. But all I would say is, just be careful. These technologies bring big advantages and they bring disadvantages to you. There's an argument, a live auction will be better than an online auction. And you can argue that time.
Yeah, same as here.
Sorry, Kim, I think you just not on mute quickly, if you don't mind, Kim. Thank you. Sorry, John.
No problem. So you just have to be very careful. It's new technology. People can get excited and carried away. It does take away the event gift. There's no question. There are certain buyers that use auctions to get together. Human beings like getting together and like chatting, and auctions have always been a place to meet and greet, you know, your peers or other people within the industry. The online auction takes that away. But I do believe that the benefits, and I'm not aware, I can only assume in that space that you're in, Gift, that you have buyer rings or people trying to get together and trying to buy collectively. Well, I can tell you, the online auction, that's what they hate, because it takes that away. You know, there is no way you can have a ring in an online auction, because they really don't know who's bidding against them. So I think for every negative connotation that either a buyer or seller throws at you, there's a positive that you can throw back. But I certainly, you know, we sell a lot of scrap for Transnet, and the scrap industry is well known for getting together and ringing the auctioneer. It can't happen on an online auction, and you know, we've managed to eradicate that, and that showed a direct result. I think it was like a 38% uptick in the price of scrap that Transnet were getting, because rings were eradicated. So, and then I think Joff covered the digital signature thing. I think it's very important that we all subscribe to a digital signature type process. People buy things in auctions in the heat of the moment, and you need to be able to get a document in front of them and insist on a signature as early as possible. So buy that technology, it's not expensive, and have it ready to submit a document and get a signature within a very short period of time.
Thank you, John. And just to iterate what John has been talking about, Gift, I think, the two of us and many auctioneers on this discussion this morning, is born into the industry by doing live auctions, and that's where our passion lies. Talking from some personal experience, I love nothing more than being on the auction block and doing a live auction, but unfortunately the industry has been changing, and doing auctions now, looking into a spotlight and a camera, that's unfortunately the future, and fortunately as well, as John described. So it takes away a little bit, but it gives a little bit more. So interesting times ahead. Before I come to Norman, I've got Sienna that has a question for Joff regarding digital viewings. Sienna, would you like to start the question?
Yes, thank you, Joff. Sorry, Joff, are you there?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yeah,
Yes.
sorry. I just want to check. When you are doing virtual viewings, what program do you use to actually set up your virtual viewing? On the spot.
Well, there we go. I can't tell you, I mean, the exact program we use, but I mean, if you Google virtual tours, it's going to be one of the top 10 that pop up on your Google search. But there's, we looked at a lot of different technology before we decided what worked for us and what we thought at the time, and now know our clients wanted and expected. You can do a virtual walkthrough on Zoom on your phone. You can do it through WhatsApp. You can do it through FaceTime on your iPhone. Those are all free. So it's not a case of the big boys having the big pockets to spend on the expensive Rolls-Royce technology. You can do it over a WhatsApp. I see there's Pam Golding and I having virtual, what do they call, live walkthrough viewings. I think Chaz Everett are also doing it, where someone is walking through with an iPhone on a gimbal or on a selfie stick and walk through their houses. So just Google virtual tours and pick one of the top 10, or just use your iPhone for free.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Joff. Norman, you raised your hand for another question. Norman, if you'd like to present your question to one of the guest speakers. Norman, are you still with us? Seems like he disappeared. Any more questions? Gift, another question. Let's keep it short, please, Gift. Gift, you're on mute. You're still on mute. See, that's the new technology you need to get used to, Joe.
Great. Thanks, Steph. I'm used to the old auctioneering techniques, jumping on the bonnet with the clipboard.
Exactly.
This is not mostly a question, but more maybe something to learn from, and it comes from the past experience that we've had when we were doing our online auction. And it goes to Joff and John. Do you guys not fear at some point, and I mean, we've experienced this, where you are in the middle of an auction, and obviously we're dependent a lot on technology because we've been moving our auctions a lot towards the online platform. And where you have a challenge where the internet drops and you're dead caught in the middle of an auction, yes, you have your backup, you have your redundancies in place, but I mean, we've had a space where we had to stop an auction for a whole hour, while the guys in IT run around in the back trying to recover the auction and trying to make sure, and in that time, you feel you've lost the momentum of the auction, you've lost a lot of some crucial buyers who might have said, listen, I'm only logging in for an hour, I'm only doing this for now, do you not find that to be a little bit of a fear factor? And I know it's not going to be a determining factor on whether we do online or not. I mean, we're all going in that direction. Do you not find a little bit of fear in that space as well?
Your question directed to who, Gift?
Either John or Joff.
Let's go for John this time around. John, you're on mute.
Yeah, he's old school, eh? Just like me.
Can you hear me now? Right. Well, yes, it's clearly a fear, but you need to understand what can possibly go wrong. So there's two things that can go wrong: is that your internet service provider, for argument's sake, can go down, but depending on understanding your bandwidth requirements, you can actually switch over to these portable devices. So you've got to think about the supply of your internet and you've got to have a backup for that, because if that goes down, nothing to do with your own technology, it's just the internet. Then your own technology, the problem with your own technology, and I don't know what technology you use, Gift, but we've developed, we have an in-house, developed over many years, and the only thing that's ever knocks it out is too many buyers. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but too many people logging on at the same time. Now, I'm going back in the early days.
Yeah,
so
we have the same challenge, yeah. That's where we also have a problem. Yeah.
Okay, so the problem is, I'm not a technical person, but we clearly got over it. I mean, so when we used to do webcast auctions is when you get a squeeze of people coming through, where they're bidding, the webcast tool where you're bidding simultaneously against people on the ground. When I told you in my little hero story when I was introduced, we did an auction in London where we sold 17,000 lots in 4 days, and we had 4 auctions running simultaneously for 4 days, selling these 17,000 lots. And obviously you can imagine, we had 5,000 registrants online, bidding online on the 4 auctions. And you can imagine how terrifying that was in terms of that system going down. But it is recoverable, and it's just a question of your technical people explaining and understanding, the sort of pressures that you put on your own system. They don't go down very often, but they do go down. I think the biggest problem when you're selecting service providers to help you, as I said, a lot of this technology comes from the US. And the US time difference is quite different. If you've got auctions starting 10 o'clock in the morning and you're relying on your service provider, you're waking up in the middle of the night to tell them that the system's gone down. So unless it's a bigger system, a lot of these companies are also small companies, technology companies. You need to satisfy yourself that if your auction goes down at 10 o'clock in the morning, they're in a position to reboot or whatever they need to do. But I've seen, just of late, I was looking at one of our South African competitors' auction, and while I was watching the auction, I saw it go down. So whilst it gave me a small element of delight, I did feel sorry for him that it could possibly happen to me. So
yes.
I think you need to understand the technology. Someone in your organization needs to understand it and what causes it, and I think you can overcome a lot of it.
Thank you very much, John. Ladies and gentlemen, if there is 1 or 2 more questions, I would like to end this webinar. We are definitely going to, we've recorded this from SAIA's perspective, and if there is any questions relating some of the answers that was given today, we can provide you with the recording. We will also, from our perspective, from the Educational Board's perspective, provide you with more answers to questions that you are more than welcome to send through to us. If there is 1 or 2 specific questions for our panelists regarding the implications of COVID-19, just please raise your hand or just take off mute. Otherwise, if there is no more questions, we would like to thank everybody, just to see if there is any more specific questions. Doesn't seem like it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the first one that we've presented from SAIA's Educational Board. I would like to thank Sonia and Charles, my co-colleague at the Education Board, for presenting this webinar. Thank you very much to our guest speakers for giving us, all the inputs that, people are relating to and had questions to. As I said, if there is any more questions, please feel free to contact us via SAIA, and Sonia will relay some of the more intricate questions to us. we will definitely be hosting another webinar in the weeks to come. From my perspective, stay safe, best of luck, and stay positive. There is, there is a solution for everything at the end of the day. So thank you very much for attending today, and have a brilliant weekend. Thank you very much. Thank you.